I would like to call to order the Winthrop School Department override public hearing. We are going to be open for public comment. We're going to open this as a school committee meeting that is being held at 1 Metcalf Square, the town hall. This hearing is being televised live and it is available via Zoom. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
Mr. Lettieri?
Yeah.
Mr. Martucci?
Yeah.
Ms. Petrie?
Here.
Mr. Purinton?
Here.
Ms. Barry? Ms. Powell?
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Payne, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm also going to ask that we take a moment of rise again and take a moment of silence for Richard Ween. He was a history teacher here who retired in 2007, and he had 35 years of experience. And in those 35 years, he became a very highly regarded teacher who was important to many of our students. Thank you. And with that, I will open up the public hearing. I ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes so we have time for everybody. Because this is a public hearing, you're welcome to both make statements, and if you have questions about the override, this is an educational opportunity, so you are free to ask those questions as well. And with that, I will open to the floor. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Sammy Precinct.
Yeah.
Caitlin Barzin, Precinct 6. I'm the chair of the Yes for Winthrop's Kids Citizens Committee to pass the override. I'm also co-president of the GFB PTO. So very involved in the schools. I love the schools. My grandmother was a teacher at Winthrop High School for 20 years. So they're very near and dear to my heart and to my family. And very passionate about getting this override passed. I don't think we can overstate the consequences if it does not pass, but I am hopeful about the energy in the community, who we've talked to, the things we've been hearing, the questions we've been getting have been really motivating and inspiring, and just seeing how much people care about our town and our schools and our children. So I just want to say thank you for doing this and providing this forum, and I hope we get some good questions tonight.
Thank you.
I guess I'll go. Follow Caitlin. Hi, I'm Courtney Woodward. I'm in Precinct 3. I've also been volunteering with the Yes for Winthrop's citizen campaign. And I think that this is a really big turning point in the community for all of us. I have 2 young kids, so me entering into the school system, this is a relatively new. However, education isn't foreign to me. Like, it's not foreign to everyone else in the room as well. And so from my personal, and as well as my husband's and everyone else that's been volunteering, I think it's almost like at a crisis point right now, so that if this does not get passed, then it will be substantial consequences, both to the kids in the school, the teachers, as well as our entire community. What we're doing now is not just investing in the schools, but it's investing in Winthrop as a whole. So I hope everyone here, I think there's a lot of support here from the schools. I'm so glad to see a lot of the teachers here as well. And thank you again for the school committee.
We'll just go online here. My name is Ashley Blackburn, and I'm in Precinct 6. I have been a homeowner here in Winthrop for almost 10 years now. I also have 2 small children. My oldest just entered into the Winthrop Public School System this year as a kindergartner at GFB. So like Courtney, I am newer to the school system here. But I've had such a great experience so far in the first 2 months, and just seeing, the transition of having a kindergartner. I'm sure many people in this room have had kindergartners at some point. I'm living it right now, but it's a big transition. It's a big deal. Those first 2 months of school, the first 2 days of school were, a huge deal in our house. And the support from the teachers, the additional staff that are there, the number of staff that are outside on the sidewalk just ushering the kids into the GFB, it takes a village. And so I think for me, one of the things that's most concerning is thinking about that number of staff decreasing, that number of support decreasing. I have a 3-year-old who will be entering into kindergarten in 2 years, and what I worry about is that his experience is going to look different than my 5-year-old who started this year. And I also have been thinking about, we've talked a lot, I think, and the override, the Citizens Committee trying to pass the override, and just hearing the statistic talked about a lot. It's been 15 years since we've had this conversation. I have almost 15 years left in the Winthrop Public School system. I have 15 years ahead of me. And I hope that we're having this conversation a lot between now and 15 years from now, because I know what it's gonna take to advance technology, to keep up with the, emerging education protocols, the technology updates that we're going to need, to retain and recruit the staff that's required to advance Winthrop public schools. So I actually hope that this is a conversation we're having every couple of years from now, so that when my 3-year-old enters into kindergarten, he has an even better experience than my 5-year-old. And as they, continue through the Winthrop public school system, I see those advances. Thank you.
The uncomfortable silence, look at that.
I'm Sharon Ranieri. I am with the Viking Times. I'm writing an article on the override published November 1st. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, the override is expected to last until FY 2028. What will happen after that year ends?
Yes, Mr. Martucci, please.
So that's an estimate. We're saying it could be 3 years, hopefully it's gonna be longer than that. I think it will be, because I'm, hopeful that our revenues will be much better than what we think they'll be. Budgeting's, it's a crapshoot. There's two things, we have revenue and expenses. Revenue, is state, local, and then expenses are expenses. Everything's past history, we look at last year's budget, we try to get it as best we can based upon that, as close as we can. Sometimes things come in better, sometimes they come in worse. I think they're gonna be better. I'm looking at the glass half full. So I think it's gonna last longer than 3 years, and I'm hoping that it will, but, after that, are you saying like if we get the override passes after 3 years, what'll happen?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like I say, it'll be longer than that, depending on what our expenses and revenues are. We'll probably have to go for another override.
And we talked this afternoon, I had the pleasure of being interviewed for the Viking Times, which was super exciting. This poor young lady had to endure me for an hour and a half to talk about school budgeting and expenses, but we talked a lot about the history of the budget and sort of our institutional knowledge of how grants and revenue to the town come in, and whether the revenue to the town, which is separate from the other ways we get money through grants, the grants have been pretty flat over the past several years. As a superintendent working with about 300 other superintendents in the Commonwealth, we continue to advocate to the state and to the federal government about taking those grants and making them equitable by community, increasing them for communities in need. And so there's some hope there. It took us a good, I think, 20 some odd years to convince the state to adjust the Chapter 70 formula. They still need to go to Chapter 70 formula school adjustment classes, and we'll continue to advocate that they do that. I think strategically, Mr. Martucci talked about, potentially it could be help us for 3 years, and maybe at the end of the 3 years we need more. If you look at our history of strategic planning and strategic use of the funds that we do have, we've gotten really good at that. I'm proud of that in one way, but I'm annoyed in another way that we have to really rack our brains to find outside resources and revenues to help run the school. But our track record is pretty good at not having to come back to the community and ask the community for more money if in fact we can do it differently. So we have a pretty good track record of being able to do that. I agree with Mr. Martucci that the revenues to the community have looked better, which are different than the grants and whatnot that we use. We are always looking to increase revenue for the school, whether it's building programs that we're allowed to take in tuition for to help offset the cost of those programs. But I, as Mr. Martucci and the rest of the community, the committee feels, is that things will look better for Winthrop in terms of revenue as we move forward. So although it's not guaranteed that we won't need to come back, If we haven't done this for 15 years, there's a pretty good possibility that we'll continue to be fiscally smart and responsible, and not to have to come back to the community unless we are in a crisis. So I hope that's helpful. She had to hear that for an hour and a half today, so.
I think the biggest thing is revenue, though, that's
Yeah.
the thing, that's the key, because expenses, we're very, very good at operating within budget and within what we're appropriated through the town. But revenue, state receipts and local receipts will tell the story about how much money we'll get. And if that comes in good, then we'll be able to go longer.
Yes.
Hi, Kathleen Capuccio, 49 Wallamar Ave. My kids are, I have a junior, well, everyone's went to public schools. My Christopher's a junior at Merrimack. My son Nicholas is a senior, and my daughter Ariana is a junior this year. And, you know, one of the things I was thinking about today, based on one of the Zooms that Lisa and Julie Barry and Gus did the other night, was we were talking about, you know, the unfunded mandates, you know, that we have. And again, it's not just, of course, Winthrop, it's, you know, other cities and towns. And I just hope that, you know, we as a community and, you know, as individuals and, you know, elected officials can really look to our leaders, you know, in the state and federal government for more support for public education, because it's just lacking greatly. And, you know, the fact is, Winthrop has the tax base it does for the most part. You know, obviously we have a very small commercial tax base. You know, our residential tax base is what it is. So we can only do so much. And the 2.5 is just not working. We need more money. I think Lisa has done an incredible job with anything she can for money in this town, and, you know, prepaying expenses that she can pay, not that I understand that, but, you know, just really, you know, nickel and diming if you can, you know, to extend what you can. But we really need to look at this as even like a bigger issue than just Winthrop. It's, our schools are not being funded properly.
Yep.
You know, Senator Markey, who I respect, posted the other day on Twitter how Massachusetts is getting, and it's not that it's a bad thing, is getting $21 million towards bike lanes. And I think that's great. But where are our priorities?
I mean, the unfunded mandates are, a lot of people don't know what those are. So unfunded mandates are things that the state or the federal government tell public schools they have to do, irregardless of whether you think it's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. What they forget to do as they add those additional items to our list of 82 million things that we have to do in order to educate kids, as they add those to us, they don't follow that with a check. So whatever it may be, and one of the things that people don't think about is when the teacher evaluation came into effect. Teacher evaluation is mandated. You have to evaluate your teachers. And over the years, what the unfunded piece of it is the number of evaluations that you have to do, the number of observations that you have to do based on whether a teacher is a new teacher or a professional status teacher, the number of staff that it takes to do that. Every time you add more to that plate, it means more people have to do more work. Teachers are, in general, and administrators are stretched, you know, about as far as they can be stretched. If you think about Winthrop, a lot of other school districts that have had to make cuts have made cuts at the administrative level. In our school buildings, each of which is 400 plus, middle school, each elementary school, the middle school, and of course the high school with 4 grades is higher than that. If you think about the fact that we have 3 total administrators per building caring for that many students. In addition to that, we have 1 school nurse per building for that many students. We have 1.5, and in some cases, 2 adjustment counselors adjusting in each building over 450 students. You think about adjusting the 2 or 3, or in my case, 4 kids in your household, and it's difficult as a parent, even though there's 2 of us, and in many cases there's only 1, and in some cases it's a grandparent adjusting 1, 2, 3, or 4 kids, and how challenging that is. So when they talk about making reductions in your budget, people want to oftentimes say, well, you know, cut the fat, you know, at the top. And what that does when you remove the 1 assistant principal in a school building, or the 1.5, well, or a 0.5 adjustment counselor, it's actually a whole person.
that may be going between two buildings, is you're eliminating somebody who's providing for the safety, discipline, health, well-being of a child. And that one person is caring for over 400 kids. So I want you to keep that kind of a mindset. Winthrop is not administratively thick. You're looking at the administration right here. And we wear a number of hats, writing grants and looking for grants and overseeing schools and safety. And so I think it's important to understand our structure. There is myself. Laurie is the curriculum director, AKA assistant superintendent, licensure person, grant writer. Many of us wear multiple hats. Assistant principal and one principal and one assistant principal in each building, and a special ed coordinator in each building. Those are your 3 individual building people. The special ed coordinator is primarily responsible for over 150 students with IEPs. And students with IEPs have multiple team meetings, multiple interactions with teachers. So there's not a lot of extra people floating around. So when we're looking at, potential reductions, it's good to have that sort of mindset. But the unfunded mandates come continuously. And anyone who would like to sit down with me for a couple of hours can review the 306 unfunded mandates that have come to public schools over the last 14 years, and the amount of time, effort, and costs that are involved with those. So I think Kathleen Capuccio is right. This revenue or funding of public schools certainly is not going to be solved by, our committees and the people in Winthrop, but our voices are super important at the state level and at the federal level to support what's important, which is the future of our existence. So thank you for that, Kathleen. I appreciate that.
Thanks. I just wanted to underscore something that Lisa just said and sort of say something from a school committee perspective. Lisa knows this budget inside and out. Every penny that has needed to be uncovered has been uncovered. I just want to sort of express, again, from my perspective as a school committee member, and I know you all might notice, but I don't know that you notice on the kind of granular level, particularly when we sit here and Lisa talks about, needing to find money and what they've had to do. I mean, this woman is a marvel, right? I mean, it is a marvel what you have done with so little for so long. And I think, I know, I kind of want to say this for all of you who are going out there and talking to Winthrop residents. Please know that from at least my personal perspective as a school committee member, this budget is being maintained incredibly ethically. I cannot imagine a more ethical management of a school budget. And it is a testament in some ways to how much Lisa has been able to do with so little for so long that we have come to this point to have not asked for an override for 15 years. But I've said this to Lisa and I'll say it publicly. In some ways I think that's a bad thing, because then people think, well, you've done it before. And that's just not the case. We cannot keep doing this. But I want people to know this is not because of something untoward. If anything, I think, again, the financial stewardship under Lisa and Lori and her administration, and I'm not on the budget committee, but under Gus's leadership, I really want people to know how well managed this school is. And believe me, this was not an easy decision for the committee to come to ask for an override. I think it's really hard for people in Winthrop and town government to say we need more money and come to the community, knowing frankly how stretched everybody is feeling right now. But I just want people to know how hard, the people in charge have been working, and that this ask is a necessary ask. This is not an indulgence in any way. So.
And the transparency of the budget, I think, has been critical. Not that everybody watches school committee meetings and understands the budget process, but I think,
They're riveting.
yeah, because they're so riveting. But the budget process itself is not something that we do in a really short time frame. We're beginning to plan the budget, even though we've had to already sort of try to plan the budget for next year prior to, the override and doing our projections. But the budget process takes about 10 months. And it's a budget process that's very different than it was in the past. It is, and I know this used to be, I guess, a bad word in public education. Maybe I'm not as old as I think I am, but a zero-based budgeting process is something that we went to 7 years ago, where we took on the role as a team. And when I say a team, I'm talking about everyone. Teachers, parent input, administration, where we looked at the old budgets, which primarily looked the same for year in and year out, and decided that we were going to take a look at each school building and have principals and staff and parents weigh in on what we needed, and then build that budget from ground zero, as if the principals had no money, and you now have to run your school. And what is it that you need, and then justifying what it is that you're asking for staffing, for items, materials, for supplies, and then making sure that everything you're asking for is directly tied to the school improvement plans, the district's strategic plan, and the goals of the school. So every penny in that budget can be tied back to what we said we were going to do. So at the end of the day, we can say we spent the money exactly the way we felt it needed to be spent, and it's all tied to what this town wanted, what the community came together and decided in our school improvement plans that needed to improve. So I think that's critical to know. That budget is about as transparent as you can be, which is beyond risky, to have that transparency. I think another key to the budget is just about having contingency plans and rainy day funds, which school districts do not have.
Thank you. Further public comment or
Let me
questions from
just see
the
if
audience?
anyone on Zoom, too. My Zoom skills.
Yes.
Quick comment, quick question. Mike Kinlan, Precinct 2, Winthrop resident for 12 years, daughter first grade at the GFB. Parents are alumni, grandparents are alumni, basically everyone but me and my sister is an alumni of the Winthrop Public Schools, so in my family. In a former life, I was a high school English teacher, and I saw some of the issues that could arise when, budgetary issues became a thing and teacher retention just like so important. And I don't know if a lot of parents and people in town realize how important a thing teacher retention is, to be able to, retain our teachers, our good teachers, our best teachers, our professionally licensed teachers, and to keep them here. And yeah, just what an important thing that is, and how important, passing this override is in terms of keeping those teachers here. So just, first off, wanted to stress that. As far as the question goes, do we have a sense of sort of the proportion of the different pressures on the budget? Is it primarily inflationary? Is it, primarily an issue of tax revenue, like equally both things? I know they're very tied into one another. What are some of the other sort of extraneous pressures on the budget that we have to, be looking out for?
Let me defer that question to our budget chairman.
So I think it's gonna be mainly revenue. Now, obviously, costs have gone up. Electricity and, your fixed costs have definitely gone up. Big one is health insurance. And it's on down the line. There's many, many, many budget line items. But I think revenue is the big thing. We can get, more revenue from the state and from local, then we should be able to maintain with the override for a number of years.
Clarifying question.
Sure,
By revenue, you mean, the property tax levy?
that's part of it.
Okay.
That's the biggest part for
I
town,
was gonna ask the
for
same, but
local. That's the
yeah.
biggest part for local, is property tax. But the state gives you chapter 70 money.
Right.
So that's a big part of it too.
Do we know roughly what the proportion of the budget that is covered by Chapter 70 is, or, rough dollars?
I've never done the percentages, but I wanna say it's, Jimmy, 10 million, 15 million?
Just about, yeah.
10 million.
Yeah, 10, 12,
Per year.
something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it changes.
Yes.
If the state does well and their receipts come in good, then hopefully they appropriate more money into chapter 70 and
Yep.
your other cherry sheet numbers. And then, of course, the town is property tax, we don't have a big business base, so that there's no split tax rate. We have a single tier tax rate, but we got local receipts, which generates money, building permits, motor vehicle excise tax, so people buy new cars, your excise tax bills come in higher, and you get more money. So stuff like that, if that comes in higher, then the town should be able to appropriate a little bit more money for the school, for all departments, school included,
Is there, like, the formula that the state uses to determine how much, is there anything that we can do as a town to have the state look more favorably on us when they're sort of doling out?
I don't think there's anything we can do about that.
Yeah,
That's at that level.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, but there are, we're not, the formula does not bode well for us,
Right.
for what we have.
And the fact that they change it once every 35 years is somewhat of a problem, considering, that needs of public education have dramatically changed. We advocate at the superintendent level on your behalf for changes in the Chapter 70 formula, and finally have gotten people to listen, and we're hopeful that they're going to continue to adjust that as we continue to advocate for those adjustments to be made.
that's every 35 years. It's-
Well, I think we've been fighting for it for, when I say we, I haven't been a
And
superintendent that
they've
long. but-
revisited it more recently with that Student Opportunity Act, but towns like Winthrop don't really benefit from that. It was larger cities that were benefiting from that, so we didn't see what a lot of local communities around us saw as far as funding changes, so unfortunately.
Are there efforts to make small towns like Winthrop more beneficiary to the Chapter 70 formulas? Because to my knowledge, Chapter 70 doesn't really help small towns like ours. Are there efforts to change that and so that we can benefit from the policies and the formula?
Well, the Chapter 70 is important for us. It's one of the biggest sources of revenue we have. Now, how much they give us is according to the formula. And the biggest thing is what the state brings in for money. They'll take that big pool of money, the billions of dollars they bring in, and they'll figure out where it's gonna go. And you have state legislatures that they figure out and, ask for this and that, and Chapter 70 is one of the things they talk about, and hopefully they give it more if they can, but you don't know. It's the, like I say, the second biggest source of revenue we have. Important for us.
And in the end, we got to in the end, it's one big pot of money. Chapter 70 increases, something else decreases, right? So it's one big pot of money. But going back to Gus's point and Lisa's point earlier, I do think it's important to realize that I strongly feel, and I think Gus agrees, that this is not a 3-year fix. This is more time than that. And if we look back, and it's been 15 years since we had an override, right? 15 years ago, the town was gracious enough to pass a roughly $600,000 override for schools. The fact of the matter is, COVID was a curse and a blessing in some respects, right? So it was a 15-year wait since we've had an override, but it was really probably a 10 or 11-year wait because we were ready to have one, and COVID took a lot away from us, a tremendous amount away, but it also gave us a lifeline for a short number of years, which prolonged this ask. I think one of the most important things coming out of this override is the creation of an educational stabilization account, right? So this is going to enable us to put some of that money aside for, more or less like a rainy day kind of a thing. But, and on the council, I want to enact new financial policies that will also try to add money to that, to try to extend the life of this override, right? Because in the end, we want to provide the best school situation we can. We're going to do it regardless of what, right? It just makes life much easier. It makes it much more beneficial for the children and for our community to have this influx right now. It's not something we ask for easily. It's not something we ask for frequently. We ask for it when it's really needed. We've gone over numbers. Lisa can talk until she's blue in the face, but, and Lisa, not only, she looks at this budget holistically, but she also looks at Mark and Andrea and Matt and Brian and for their help, for their input as the leaders of each of the schools, and gives them that autonomy to look for what's really needed for their schools. So she's not just sitting upstairs saying, this is what we're going to do. She's asking the leaders of each school for what they need, and I'm sure they will tell you that they don't get everything they want or believe they need, because it's just, nobody does, right? You look at the school budget, and the school budget is now the way it's been changed, it's approaching $40 million over the next couple of years. Now, some of that is for the debt on the school, which will come off eventually. But when you look and you say that there's a 2.5% levy increase, and you look at roughly a $30 million, say, operating budget, and so 2.5% is $625,000 or so. So you say, okay, the town's gonna give us an extra $625,000 next year, and then you get your insurance bill, and the insurance bill alone is an extra $500,000. So now you're down to $100,000 to do everything else, right? To do the staff, to do the children, to do the extracurriculars, to try to supplement athletics and drama and such. You know, I'm a big proponent, I'd love to see us eliminate fees, right? Because, you know, I think that's a huge distraction for families, and I think it's something that the schools should provide. I know, you know, people talk about extracurriculars, and I know Lisa is right on this as well, and, you know, drama and sports and other activities shouldn't be considered extracurricular, they should be considered part of what a child expects out of school, and it should be funded by the schools. But this is something that I think is going to last for an extended period of time, and I think it's an onus on the town to try to change the way we do our financial policies. And I think it's an onus of the school to be incredibly cognizant of every nickel and dime they have coming in, which Lisa is, but when you have a place to park money, you know, on the town side, if DPW had extra money at the end of the year, they have to turn it back into the town. They have to turn it back in. Schools try to prepay expenses and such, but now they'll have a place to have an account where in years going forward, if there's a, you know, we're a little short here or a little short there, now we'll have a place to take it from. So that education stabilization account is a huge piece of this, incredibly needed. It's something that I've discussed for many years, and I know Lisa's a huge proponent of it, and that's a huge piece of this. That sometimes it's hard to articulate it in a way that people understand it, because people just look and say $4.95 million, that's a lot of money. But when you break it down granularly and you look at each school, and we've been fortunate that the town's been incredibly generous over the last 25 years that we've been able to build all new schools, basically, right? And we've been fortunate that we've paid off the Fort Banks, the Gorman School. We've paid off the Cummings School. You know, in 3 years, we'll have paid off, 5 years, we'll have paid off Miller Field. In another 14 years, we'll be paid off the middle high school. So it's incredible what we've been able to do, and that's helped us in some respects, because these buildings are relatively new, maintenance is a little easier. The unfortunate thing is everything works, right? All the systems work when they never used to work before, so you're spending a little bit more money there, but we've been fortunate. Now it's coming to the time where some of these buildings are getting older too, and we've made a promise when the citizens were kind enough to pass overrides for the schools. We made a promise to make sure we maintain these schools, and we've done a great job. Custodians have been incredible. The principals of the buildings have been right on top of things, superintendent and such. So we want to be able to continue to do that, right? And we can't, and that's the first thing, right? You say, oh, we don't have any money, what are we going to do? We're going to cut maintenance, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut that. We don't want to be in that position. We want to be able to go forward, you know, in a way that just makes the town proud, makes the children's future incredibly bright. And again, and I've said it before, and I know now Lisa will say it, on the side of the Cummings School, there's a plaque, more or less, that was on the Willis School that said the future of our nation depends on its youth, and it, you know, we have to do that investing ourselves. So I encourage people to ask questions and learn more about this, because it's incredibly important.
Yes.
Gillian Texera, Precinct 6. I won't list everything I'm involved in the town, because I'll take up more than 3 minutes, but right now I'm here with the Yes Committee. The biggest thing I hear when we're out speaking to people is this, they have this thought that the money that is gonna be raised for this override won't go directly to the school, that it will be still divided between the 60-40 as the budget is. And Lisa did a great PowerPoint, and the last page does straight out say that all this money is earmarked and it goes right to our schools. I don't know if you can expand on that, or really write it and promise it. I signed something, I don't know how to get this out to people, but people don't believe this. And I don't know how many times I can say that I've heard it from Lisa, I've heard it from the school committee, that this money is all going to the schools, and that's all it's going to. They are so convinced that the town, and something I heard the other day was they're seeing job openings in other positions, and I get it that the town is compartmentalized. I'm also with the library, I get that the budgets are separate. But when they see that, they go, well, if you have money to hire more people, then you must have money to give into the schools. But I understand it's compartmentalized, but people keep seeing that all this money is gonna go, well, there's new jobs, there's new this, there's a new fire truck, a new this, or not a new fire truck, I shouldn't say, but what I'm saying is they see something new and something shiny, and suddenly it's like, well, that must be the money that, you know, they have extra money. But I think getting that point across, and I don't know how better to do it, but that's something that needs to be stressed to people because they're not understanding that.
Mr. Lettieri, I'd like to address that question to you as,
Okay, yeah,
Town
well,
council
again,
chair.
if you go back 15 years when we had the last override, the two of the major items, we had a menu override, right? And there was 10 items on the menu, and two of them, one of them was the senior center and one of them was the library. And those were both slated to be closed. I mean, that was in the middle of the recession in '08 and '09, and times were incredibly tough. So we were going to close them, and we had a question for the senior center and for the library, they both passed, and that's where the money's gone. We're legally obligated, and to be full transparency, we're legally obligated to give that money exactly where it's supposed to go for a year or two, legally. The town, you know, again, we can't sign it in blood or anything, but it only benefits the town, right? I mean, if the town ever diverted the money after 2 or 3 years, or 4 years, or 5 years, the town would never get another dime from the citizens. I mean, we have an obligation to do what we're supposed to do. The citizens want the money to go there, that's where the money goes. But we have a legal obligation, not only a moral obligation, to make sure that that money goes to the schools.
And I can tell you that I'll be watching. And, you know, people know that I am not shy when I know something is correct. The town council knows that I don't come to every town council meeting because I can watch it from home and actually be a parent for 10 minutes a day. But, you know, I have not experienced anything in the town in which the town has made either a promise to us in terms of educational funding in this is my 8th year now, well, it's like the 34th or something prior to this job, but I have not ever had to go to the town and say, you told me you were giving me this and you didn't. And on the reverse, I've gone to the town council prior and asked for support for something and have received that. Did I get $15 million for, you know, a full budget that, you know, we needed? No, we know we have to live within our means, but I have no doubt that money will be there. But I do think it's a trust issue. And when you think about the schools and when you're talking about the schools, I hope that people know that if we're asking for this money for the schools, that we are going to make sure that the money is provided to us and utilized by us. So if there's certain things that you don't trust about the town, but you do trust the schools, vote with that trust thought. But we will keep making sure that folks are aware that creating the Educational Stabilization Fund should really nail that trust down when folks see exactly what's going to go into that account, which is going to help FY '27 as well, and FY '28 and beyond.
yes, Mr. Micciche.
Every town ballot has to go in front to the state for approval. So when you have a question on a ballot, whether it's for the school or police or whoever it is, it's approved by the state. So that money, they know that money is now earmarked for the schools or whatever department. We're also audited. So if the auditors see that we're not spending the money in the school that was voted on by the citizens, then there's gonna be a problem. So the money's coming to the schools.
We do have someone on Zoom
Yes,
if you
please.
don't mind. So Shannon Poulos, and Shannon, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and there you go.
Hi there, Shannon Poulos, Precinct 3. I just wanted to address a few comments in the room that were made around like Chapter 70 and state level involvement. I'm actually really happy to hear that we're finally talking about that because we're a little town and we can only survive to a certain extent without the support of our
Oops, sorry, that's me.
So at that point, I sent an email asking specific questions to both our senator and our representative, and I received no response from our state senator. I received an incredibly thoughtful response from Representative Turco. And so I'm glad people are asking, and I think people should be paying attention to what our state senator and state representative are focused on and what they're not focused on. And as it relates to Chapter 70, perhaps they
Thank you, Shannon. And I can check to see if I have anyone else on Zoom. I do not see anyone else on Zoom. Not sure if someone wants to speak. If you do, feel free to unmute.
Any more comments or questions from the room? Yes.
So, I also have the pleasure of being interviewed by Shannon. She's a very tough interviewer. And one of the things she asked me that I had complete ignorance on is if the override doesn't pass, what would I cut? And I just had to say, I don't know. I'm not an educator, I'm not an administrator, I genuinely don't know. But I thought this might be a good opportunity for you. I know you laid out some of it in the slides and in your presentations, but what exactly is mandated curriculum and mandated services versus things that are not mandated by the state, so they are maybe, and you can tell me if I'm putting this wrong, but they are on the table for cuts.
Yeah. So, sounds like this is on Zoom, so hold on, let me just mute.
Shannon has 3 kids.
There you go. So mandated, there are many mandated things that in public education, you have to follow, okay? So special education services, EL services, teacher evaluations, transportation for homeless students, identifying homeless students, providing mentoring for teachers. There are, like I said, a list of over 300 mandates and more that are required of schools. Some of the things that are not mandatory are things like class size, except for special education. Special education has very, specific state and federal laws around class size and how many students you can have in a class per teacher, whether or not you have to have an instructional aid added to that. But general education does not have a class size mandate. We currently have an average class size at the elementary level of the low 20s, which is, good. I'm not going to say it's excellent, because a class size of 15 would be pretty amazing. I don't know how many people have sat in a classroom with 15 to 25, 5-year-olds lately, but, it's a lot for one person. So we committed in our school improvement plans and in our strategic plan to try our best to maintain average class size, and average to us was low 20s. High school is a little bit of a different story because it's course dependent. Some courses get oversubscribed, they're at larger classes, and that depends, at that level it's a little bit different. So class size is not a mandate. I'm trying to think of other things that aren't mandated, you have to follow the
choices
frameworks.
of those classes, what classes we offer at the high school, obviously, there are mandated courses that students have to pass in order to graduate, and there are courses that they don't. And there's different levels of those courses that potentially could be combined. Like, there's just so many different ways like that, but you just don't know, because like Mr. Lettieri said earlier, that's when the conversations will start with the principals and saying, what do things
What
look
do we
like
do
in your
next?
building? What do you need going forward, and what can't be touched,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and some other things that we don't oftentimes think about, because I believe, and I know the committee believes, that co-curricular activities are not extra. It's not extra
Right.
to have an art class. That shouldn't be extra, because the majority of the Commonwealth and the country, these are, health. I mean, phys ed is required to a certain level. Health classes for our kids, social emotional learning, support of an adjustment counselor. If it's not on an IEP or if it's not on a 504, it's not required, but it's necessary to maintain the social, emotional, and mental health of our students in this ever-changing world. Athletics, it's not required to have athletics. I can tell you that the majority, a large majority of students at the high school level show up to school because we have athletics. They might like English, they might like math, but they're there and motivated to be there because that is something that gives them a reason, to continue. And that's the same with things that we've been pushing for, I can say now for 8 years in a row, band. We haven't had band in 8+ years. That's not, I don't find that to be an extra. Do the research and see what music does for humans. It's not, although it's not called math, it's not called history, it's not called science, it's a subject. And it's something that keeps people involved, and we educate the whole child. We don't just get the brain that comes to school for English, math, science, and social studies. We get the entire child with their backpack filled with emotion, with struggle, with interest, and their interest is beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic. So those co-curricular activities that some people call extracurricular, they are part of educating the whole child, and allows a lot of kids to continue to be mentally and socially and emotionally healthy. So unfortunately, a lot of those things are not mandated. If you look at our staffing budget versus our expense budget, and if you remove some of the expenses such as healthcare and things that we have no choice but to pay as an employment agency, the majority of our budget is staffing to teach children. So when your budget has to be reduced, and you still have to have electricity, you still have to have heat, you still have to pay the telephone bill, you still have to pay all of the things that are required to keep school buildings physically open, and those things can't be touched, and the other things that can't be touched are specialized instruction and all of those other mandates. It comes down to other programs that are not mandatory, and one of those is class size. And how does class size go up? Class size goes up when you have less teachers teaching, 23 students. If you end up removing a teacher per grade, people may think, 2 or 3 more students per class, that's not a lot. Come spend a day with us. Come sit in a classroom. Come watch a teacher with 23 kids in a classroom and 1 teacher. When we are a public school, so our children in each classroom are diverse. They have multiple needs. You have students with IEPs, you have students with 504 plans, you have students with English language learner needs. You have students who have nothing but need more than the average student. So you're not walking into a classroom that just has 24 kids who are going to sit in the chair and listen and raise their hand when they have to go to the bathroom and not have a bellyache and understand what you're asking them to do. That's not what a public school is. And our teachers do an amazing job. Somebody spoke about, retaining teachers. In a world where there's a teacher shortage, I don't know if anyone here knows that, I know that quite well. When you start to talk about 2.5 overrides and you start to talk about a budget that potentially could be cut, and they're smart to think this way, people begin to get nervous, because at the end of the day, you have to pay your bills. And so that's my fear, is that if we are not moving forward and we have to face some cuts, not only will we lose the people that we don't want to lose, but my guess is they'll take a friend, because it might be them the following year. So not to go off on a tangent on that, but I can.
A quick question. Does the state now limit the amount of IEPs and 504s that can be in a single class for a single teacher? I don't know if they're...
No.
So I can tell you what sort of broke me as a teacher. I was young, granted, but in a class of, I believe it was a class of roughly 25 kids. I had between like 10 and 12 individualized education plans,
Mm-hmm.
and a number of 504s, kids who had both IEPs and 504s. I think people don't realize when they talk about raising class size from something like, say, 18, 19 to say 25, 26, 27, you are increasing exponentially sometimes the demand on the teacher.
Mhm.
And when you have a single kid with a 504 in a class size of 18 versus a class size of 28,
Yep.
the difference that makes for like working with
Sure.
that 504, and it unmanageable,
Yep.
becomes unmanageable in a lot of circumstances, and that was, where I sort of said,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try something else for a little while, but
Yeah.
that was as you get
Sure.
into those larger class sizes.
So larger class sizes, but also reductions in budgets in general.
Yeah.
So the more you reduce the opportunities for students to have intervention without having any type of a letter after their name, the more you reduce that, you don't have extra support for enhancement for students who are on the bubble. So like we call those our, tiered support systems. as you cut budgets and you remove the people who, you may want to think are extras, but they're the people that are mitigating the need for a 504 or an IEP. So the more you remove those extras or additional supports for kids, those tier 1 and tier 2 supports for students, the more you remove those, the wider the gaps get with kids, and the more likely they are to need a mandated service, which you now have no choice but to provide. So you see how that struggle bus works.
And I
Thank you.
think it's also, you're talking about potential losses or whatever, and I think it's important to say that this would be shared by the town as well, right? I mean, you're not talking about a couple $100,000 gap that they have to make up. The gap is incredibly substantial. And, and just to throw a number, if you're looking at, and I don't think anybody's ready to say a number or how many staff or whatever, but if you're just looking just to say, okay, let's do math and say, one teacher a grade, right, is easy. Just throw it out there and say, even that isn't even $1 million. So now you're looking at 3 times that. So the town also is going to have an obligation to say, okay, we're going to have to adjust something to help in some way, any way we can, which is going to have effect on town services as well, right? So it's not just the schools that ultimately would be affected. And, people have to realize it's, and people might think about, well, how do you get that short in 1 year or whatever? And it's not, because we're actually short this year, and through the craziness of how, Lisa was able to put together funds that are not, ideally you want to use reoccurring funds to pay reoccurring expenses. So if you're paying a teacher, whether it's a grant or whether it's from the money that you have, the operating budget, you want to make sure that money's coming in every single year. When you stop paying reoccurring expenses with one-time money, that's when the problem is. And as good as COVID was in a lot of ways financially, there were many cities and towns out there that just used that money for reoccurring expenses. We were as good as we possibly could. In the end, you had to use some of it for reoccurring expenses, but the incredibly vast majority of that money was used for one-time purchases, right? So puts us in a little bit better position, but still in a position where we were to the point, especially in this year, 2025, where we're using fiscal 2025, we're using one-time money to pay reoccurring expenses, and that's a bad thing, and that's where it's
And had we not used the COVID money, a lot of the COVID money we got for one-time expenses, we would not have been able to survive at all. We would have been going back to the town for that additional money. And just the last thing I'll add is, I did have somebody ask me why I waited so long. So this is not an I thing, by the way. This is not just me. Not that I'm trying to blame other people, I'm trying to support the fact that there are a lot of people that are involved in the management and the budget of the school district. I do not build anything by myself. I've grown smart enough to include people to help make me look halfway decent. In 2019, had that COVID money not come to us, and had we not used it strategically for the things that we needed, many of those things, COVID or not, were going to still be needed. Whether it was heating systems, whether it was HVAC stuff, whether it was curriculum, whether it was support staff, they were going to be needed anyway. And so I was asked why I didn't ask in 2020 for an override, even though we had that money, because the impact of not asking for it then has made the gap wide and has made the cost more. I was here every day throughout the entire pandemic and was pretty cognizant of what was going on inside your house, because my staff was in your house while they were here. And so we were very much aware of the stresses on families and how many people were not working. We were fortunate, or depending upon how you look at it, we were working as teachers and educators. And so to go to the community and ask the community for money during a global pandemic, when the federal government and the state government were giving us money to help mitigate the impacts of that pandemic, my opinion, and it could be the wrong opinion, was that would have been disingenuous. Not only that, it would have gone down in flames. And I probably still wouldn't be here for asking people for money during a global pandemic when we had money. So the continuation of transparency and honesty about our budget reigned during that time. So to ask that question as to why we didn't do it then and now we've caused this larger gap, it may in fact be true, but one, it wouldn't have passed, and two, it wasn't the right thing to do during a global pandemic when other folks were not working. But it is true that now that it has widened, and we used every penny of that to the best of our ability, and we have simply hit a wall.
And just for clarification too, that money we couldn't have asked for an override and then just said, oh, we're gonna put all the COVID money in the bank and save it for later, right? There were specific dates that you had, there were obviously specific items that you had to use the money for, and there were specific dates when you had to spend it by, and if you didn't spend it, you had to give it back, right? So you couldn't bank that money for anything in the future. That money's basically all gone now, right? Correct, by the end of October?
It's
whatever
gone. The
it is.
impacts
Yeah.
of COVID is still here, in case anyone asks.
Could I just say one thing, and I promise I will make this quick? To that question of sort of what happens if the override doesn't pass, I think every single student, and hence every single family in the Winthrop school system is going to be adversely affected. For the kid maybe who doesn't necessarily need special services but was sitting in a class of 21 that is now sitting in a class of 28, right? For the kid in high school who suddenly can't take advanced math because it's not offered anymore, right? To the drama, or the kid in middle school who, there's not drama anymore, or there's not 2 plays a year, there's only 1 play a year, and that's the kid's favorite thing to do. So it's not that if this override passes, it's only gonna affect the teachers, or it's only gonna affect the people who are directly connected to the school system. It's going to affect every child in town, hence every parent in town, every grandparent in town, every neighbor in town, right? So, I think I would advise that we really think of this as an investment, not just in our children, but in our community. I know Gillian is gone, but I think it is important to acknowledge this is a really difficult time. It's a really difficult time in our nation's history. This is a really difficult time in our town's history. But from where I sit, this is something that I hope we can all agree on. I don't think this is a controversial issue in some ways. I know it's difficult to say to people, this is gonna cost you money. But I think the question of what kind of community do we want to have, what kind of schools do we want for our kids and our grandkids and our neighbors, I think that's actually not a controversial question. It's not the kind of question that people get angry about. And I'll just say something kind of personal. I've been so grateful to have worked, in some ways with the override committee and on this committee, because it feels like being a part of this experience is something I can wholeheartedly believe in. There's no controversy here for me. There's no sense of like, oh, but maybe I should feel this way on this issue. I feel pretty strongly about this issue, and I know everybody sitting here in this room does too. But I just feel like if we can convey that to the community as a whole, right? This isn't something I think that hopefully raises really angry feelings. This is something that I think raises like hopeful feelings.
Thank you. Mr. Martucci, I want to ask you a clarifying on the COVID money, because yes, we had money, but can you address what was happening with the budgets at that time? And I don't believe that the COVID put us flush or put us over our needs. If I recall, we were actually still below level services each of those years.
Every year we were still below. We tried as best we could to fill everything that we wanted to do. We never got the needs budget. We always asked for a level service. And we never really got the whole full level service. But again, the COVID money did fill in a little bit on some stuff. No, we never got level serviced.
Okay, so we were continuing to fall deeper into,
Yes. Yep.
further behind in those years, just not as quickly as we had been.
No, because we had COVID money to fill in some gaps.
Okay, thank you. Any further, yes?
Hi, I'm Olivia Heathby. I'm one of the new math teachers at the high school. I just want to say, I think this is really important. I don't live in Winthrop, but I really do. First of all, I really enjoy working in this community. I really love how everyone is so closely knit together. Even though I don't live here, though, I think this bill is going to be super important. I actually already have a class of 28, and I'm super grateful to have a co-teacher in my classroom. I don't know what I would do without her. I don't even think about myself about how much more difficult it is to work with those students. The first thing I think about is I can't help all of them at once. With 28 students, I can't, in math especially, there's certain steps they have to do to solve the problems. I can't sit through each person who's having difficulty and walk them through step by step, because I have to go from here to here to here to here. So having that co-teacher in that classroom really helps. So I just think that having if this goes through, it's going to be super important just so that we don't have those class sizes going up. that and my classroom is super small. I actually only have 28 chairs in my room. And if I have any more students, they'll have to have more people at tables, and it's just not gonna work.
I have a container for you on the back. I have a container on the golf course that I can get you a chair.
I don't know if any other teachers have talked yet, but that's just like my 2
Yeah.
cents. I'm new to all this in general, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
kind of say that.
Thank you for sharing.
And on a side note, I was gonna say, on a side note, I appreciate you taking over on the math. I know that that's a
Yeah.
particularly big issue at the high school.
Yeah.
I would like to add to what you said. My computer science teacher, for like the computer science curriculum, it's all on one platform. So like AP, computer science, AP, CP, and honors kids all get switched into a class together. My class currently has 36 students, and my teacher's room can only hold 28 like yours. So we have to borrow chairs from the math teachers across the room, from downstairs, from either the library. Well, actually, my teacher has this, has the AP students go to the library so that there is room for the remaining 32 left in the room. So I think stressing the fact that if this override is passed, we need more teachers and like possibly the addition of more classes within like a single subject, so that like the teachers and the students aren't stressed, because like I feel bad for the students in my class who have to deal with 31 other bodies in the room. Like for me that just sounds stressful. I'm over here like sitting in the library because I'm like chill, because I don't have to deal with anyone. So it's just like stressing the fact that $4.95 million can really expand a classroom by taking students away from the room. So.
And I think about you guys as the students a lot. I don't even put myself first with that. I feel so like I just want to help all of them, but I can't be in like 2 places at once, unfortunately. And so yeah.
I have to go after school if I need help with a computer science problem. I have to go after school, or I have to go during my teacher's free period.
Yeah.
Or like if I have time, I have to go to her. I can't even like ask her in her classroom because I'm not even in the room with her. So that's my 2 cents as well.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Annie Ferrara. I'm precinct 3. I don't have kids. I did not go to the Winthrop public school system, but I've worked as a nanny. I've worked in the schools. I'm a former teacher as well. And I think that we just need to take a second here and like talk about how great Winthrop's kids are, because I've seen them at the park. I've seen them in the marketplace. I've seen them at the library. I've read about their sports accomplishments. I've seen their poetry and art on display. And Winthrop's kids are really awesome. And they're polite, and they're kind, and they're well educated, and that's because of our schools. So thank you, because those are the kids that are gonna grow up and be our firefighters, and be our teachers, and be our politicians. And someone said in one of the Zooms or in one of the things that like, what kind of community are we? We need to show up for our schools right now, especially for the people who don't have kids and don't have that tie, right? Like, it's just as important for us to be involved as the people who do have involvement and children and a past in the school. So to our school committee, to our teachers, thank you. To our parents who are raising the children, thank you. The student that we have in the room tonight, great example. And I just think it's really important to just really think about the kids when you're going to the polls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed, I don't know what precinct I'm in.
It's okay.
I'm her mom. We've only been in Winthrop for 3 years. We moved from the north end, from Mecklenburg, Pennsylvania. There's one thing moving to a much smaller town than from Boston, and I grew up in North Jersey, so it's very small here, is that there's pride in this town that the people have. It goes back from generations, oh, a little quaint Winthrop by the sea. Why people can't take that pride and put that into the schools right now, I don't know, because it's just something else to be proud of. And, okay, so it's gonna go up $900 in taxes, but your property values are gonna go up even better, and you guys are gonna look even better. And that's what I just don't understand. It just seems like a simple equation, and like $900 for some does seem like a lot, but in the long run, it's a small price to pay for something that's gonna be further lasting. And just take the pride into that school.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to supplement. Private school is a lot more expensive than $900 too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know I'm like preaching to the choir with school committee. I know most everyone here is involved in the campaign in some way, but maybe if there's anybody on Zoom, if anybody replays this, there's 2 weeks until the election starting tomorrow. We still need a lot of help with getting the word out. It's tremendous how many people we still talk to. We were canvassing this weekend who were like, oh, there's a question on the override, or people who tell us that they already voted and they just voted no because they hadn't heard of it and they didn't know, so they just decided to vote no because they weren't aware of the question before they went in to vote. So, you know, anybody who feels passionate about this, who wants to be part of getting the word out, talking to people, please get in touch with us on Facebook, on Instagram, yesforwinthrupskids.com. We have plenty of opportunities for you to hold signs, canvas, help us raise money to pay off those lawn signs. But there's a lot to do in the next 2 weeks, so don't feel like it's too late to get involved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Sorry, again. I just want to go back to what, I forget your name, I'm so sorry. Not you, Kim. Andrew, yeah. What you said about like my generation and the generations that are coming after me are the future of Winthrop, and they're going to be your teachers and your firefighters. And Ms. Howard and I were actually talking about this earlier today, how maybe even some of us are going to be the caregivers for those who voted no. So it's just like, that's like also something to put in perspective as well. So like the future of others who didn't vote yes intentionally, like they're also putting their future lives also on the line as well.
Very good point.
Okay, any further questions or comments?
Just one, just to let everybody know, right, you're talking about the override, there is voting already. Early voting has started, it's the same hours as the town clerk's office is open, it's also on certain Saturdays. And the ballot, just to make sure, this is not a ballot, but it's like 2 pages, right? So it's front and back and then front again. And the front has the second question, the last question on the ballot. It's very tiny, and again, it's directed by, you know, and I know Gus mentioned it earlier, but it's directed by the state as to what can and cannot go on a ballot. So it's basically 4 questions before it from the state, which has paragraphs on each thing, and then there's one question at the end, and it just says, would you be in favor of a $4.95 million override for Winthrop Public Schools? So just remember where it is on the ballot. There's 2 sides, there's 2 pages. Make sure you fill everything out.
Question 6.
Very good. Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate everybody who showed up tonight, and I want to say a thank you to our community, because we have a very supportive community, and it has been a true pleasure to be able to see everybody rising up and supporting our schools.
Thank you all very much.
And with that, I will close the public hearing and open the main meeting. Can I have another roll call, please?
Ms. Leonard? Yes.
Really moral friendly response out there.
Mr. Lettieri?
Yes, yeah. Here.
Ms. Barry? Ms. Powell?
Here, and I will give us just a moment to let the room clear.
Yes. We're, on the bridge. Oh, okay. What is the, what's the time, like, what time?
Okay, moving on to the regular business of the meeting.
Sorry.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 7th, 2024?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Lettieri, second by Mr. Purinton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. May I have a motion to pass warrant SVW 25-7 in the amount of $322,997.37?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Purinton, second by Ms. Leonard. Any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call?
Ms. Leonard? Yes. Mr. Lettieri?
Abstain.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Petrie?
Yes.
Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. May I have a motion for payroll warrant SPW 25-05 in the amount of $877,286.53?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Purinton.
Second.
Second by Ms. Petrie. Any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call?
Ms. Leonard? Yes. Mr. Lettieri?
Abstain.
Mr. Matucci?
Abstain.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. May I have a motion for payroll warrant SPW 25-06 in the amount of $905,049.28?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Purinton, second by Ms. Petrie. Any discussion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Leonard? Yes. Mr. Lettieri?
Abstain.
Mr. Matucci?
Abstain.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. And that brings us to the Budget Policy Subcommittee, which met tonight. Ms. Petrie, you have a report for us.
I do. So, Ms. Leonard and I were able to meet and we reviewed the remaining portion of section I, which was policy IHD through the end, through IMG. And the first portion of section J, which was JA through JHE. And we are recommending that with the exception of the policies related to the use of technology, including social media, and the policy with respect to kindergarten enrollment, those two right now are on hold because Ms. Howard has drafted a kindergarten policy that would be specific to Winthrop that we want to take a look at. And we're going to pull other examples from other districts, what their technology use is, because I think things have morphed through 2020 and beyond. So just to see what other people do for their policies. Otherwise, we recommend that the committee accept the remainder of section I and the start of section J in form.
Okay, can I have a motion to that effect?
Motion. Second.
Motion by Ms. Leonard, second by Mr. Lettieri. Any discussion? Hearing none, can I, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Superintendent's report.
So this evening, based on our meeting that we had prior to this, I'm going to push off some of that information until the next meeting, and at the next meeting, we'll also have our junior class president doing, she was going to come tonight, but I figured she would best be served coming to the next meeting where she had the floor to herself. So the two of us will take over again at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We have appointments, new hires, resignations.
Yeah, so just two new hires. Victoria Vieira is already with us, accepted the position as the STEM teacher at the middle school, and Cameron Conley is replacing an ESP who resigned quite a bit ago. And we had the resignation of the high school phys ed teacher. We are actively seeking a high school phys ed teacher. This was an unanticipated resignation for personal reasons. So we wish our former employee the best, and we're hopeful that we'll have a new phys ed teacher sooner than later. And postings, none.
Okay, do we have any homeschool applications?
We do not.
Okay, that brings us to public relations, please.
Yes. So congratulations to the JV Viking cheer team who placed second at their first competition over the weekend. The boys hockey booster is hosting a fundraiser on Saturday, November 2nd at the Yacht Club, featuring The Point with Locust as an opening act. Tickets are $25. You can Venmo at Vikings-boys-hockey. Tickets will also be sold at the door. The donation includes food and the two live bands.
Just pause on that. I just want to emphasize that this is the Winthrop Yacht Club.
Yes, Winthrop Yacht Club, sorry.
Thank you.
The Winthrop High School Drama Society is performing the musical Six on November 14th, 15th, and 16th at 7 o'clock at the Neil Shapiro Center. Tickets are $10 for students and seniors and $15 for adults, and they are available on our school's website. The class of 2026 is hosting the annual Country Fair on November 21st at St. Michael's Gymnasium. The doors open at 5:30 with a $5 entry fee. It's always a great take-in and an excellent fundraiser for the schools. Shout out to Mr. Brown, who was here earlier. He competed in the Chicago Marathon on October 13th, which I saw pictures of. Great work, Mr. Brown. And a very special shout out to Chris Suma, who retired after 36 years. We mentioned her before. She likes to be kind of kept in the background, but Chris is gone, but we know where she lives, so she'll be substituting.
Very good. Any other public relations?
It's book fair season at the elementary schools, so I know the ATC's book fair is this week. I'll be there tomorrow.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Very good.
Send your checkbooks.
Favorite time of the year.
Bring them
Good
upstairs.
for them to give the kids. There will also be a public forum tomorrow night on Zoom at 7.
Not Wednesday.
I'm sorry, Wednesday. Thank you for the clarification on that. So there'll be public forum Wednesday at 7 on Zoom.
Where can one find the link?
That's a good question.
I think it's on the town website.
It's on the town
It should be
website,
on
on
the
the town
town website.
calendar.
It's on the school calendar as well.
And
That was for everybody out there.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
yes, it is Wednesday
Asking
night
for a
at 7
friend.
o'clock.
Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. And the link is available on the town calendar and the school calendar, in the town website. All right, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposition? Motion passes. Thank you.